All right. Hopefully we got a couple people to pop in. Oh, okay. I got you. Mark McKeever, what's a guy got to do to get a live show around here? He says. Well, here we are, Mark.
Has begun.
It has begun. What color do we want to do for this DC round robin?
What did we do last time?
Who fucking knows?
I mean, I'd say blue or red. I don't know.
Okay. Red sticks out. Red sticks out. It pops. All right. Well, you know what? We'll just get on with the show. You don't have the show playing in the background anywhere, do you?
No.
Oh, because I hear a little bit of myself in the background there.
I mean, it's probably just off of my computer from, the stream itself.
Oh, perhaps.
Is that any better?
I don't know. We're about to... Yes, we're finding out, and I can confirm that it is better.
Cool.
All right. Now that I've had a sip of my coffee. Hey, guys. Welcome to the 75th episode of Let's Talk Comics, where myself and another co-host in the comic book community discuss one of the many facets of the storytelling medium that is comics. Whether it be stories, creators, constructs, adaptations, we hit it all. This week, I am rejoined by the Sultan Supreme of all nerds, the one and only NerdScum. Brother, what's up?
Not much, man. How goes it?
It goes, man. I shaved my mustache. I look like a child, and I'm ready to talk about the round robin.
Right on, dude. Lack of mustache looks good. I have no complaints. It'll
Thanks,
be all right.
Thanks, man. I'd be a little bit disappointed if my co-host had to complain about my mustache or my lack thereof.
It's like, I know I agreed to do this thing, but now that I'm looking at you, this isn't gonna work for me.
Oh man, if you go into comic books and you base everything off of looks, you're fucked. You're just fucked. You're done. It's over. Wildebeard. Oh man, I feel like the fact that I technically shaved part of my beard is just ashamed that like the first show I do, Wildebeard shows up because he's got a massive old beard. I'm sorry, man. The mustache, I was trying to trim it and it got really annoying and I just got frustrated and I was like, yeet. And I was like, well, we wear masks in public now, forgetting that I have like a public YouTube channel that I record my ugly mug on. So here we are, boys. Let's talk about some comics. So for those of you that didn't join us 2 weeks ago-ish, NerdScum and I, like many of you, participated in DC Comics Round Robin, which is a public poll that they are taking amongst the fans in order for us to decide what book is going to get made. Now, seeing how they've gotten as far as making all these options, NerdScum and I both sort of surmised that at some point or another, most, if not all of this is going to see print regardless. The winner will probably just see perhaps more print or get a little bit more shelf life. But there were a lot of interesting options. And the biggest problem we had with round one was that we had no creative teams. This week we got them. This week we also got a bit of promo art. But before we get into it, I want to make sure that you guys know that Corey NerdScum and his production company that he works with has a really cool event that's going on online that you should all go check out. And I'm going to give the mic over to him to talk about it for a quick sec.
Yeah, just real fast before we jump in here. It's LSF Fest 5, the Invasion of the Vice Squad. So LSF, Little Spark Films, is the production company that I work with. And once a year, they kind of do like a live event showcasing a lot of the stuff that they've done in-house, as well as those of us who are like part of the group, but have also produced stuff outside of the group. Kind of showcase all that stuff. So this year, that is happening on the 30th of this month, being April, starting at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. And for this year, for the lineup, we've got, we've got the short film that we did a year or so back called The Torturer, which stars Paul T. Taylor of Hellraiser Judgment. And Lawrence, oh my God, I know your last name, Lawrence. He doesn't use social media, so he'll never see this. But Lawrence, oh my God, why am I blanking on his name? I feel so bad, and this is live, and I can't fix it. Anyway, this awesome dude, Lawrence, who's in Breaking Bad and Sin City 2. along with Paul Taylor in Sin City 2. So we got that going. Then we also have another short film by one of our guys named Ty Adams, which is called The Man Who Left Nothing, which just recently got distribution streaming wise through Troma Now.
Cool.
And then we will have my fake trailer that's also being distributed by Troma and the Grindsploitation called Shattered in the Head. And then our main event for the evening is we're going to be doing the trailer for Vice Mares, which is the feature film that I wrote and co-starred in and we produced last December, which is currently in post-production. But we got our first trailer coming, and that's kind of the main event of this year.
Big moves. I'm going to be there. So you guys with taste better be there too. Corey's a really talented filmmaker, immensely talented writer. I've taken great pleasure in over the last couple weeks, just talking random story with him in the wee hours of the morning. So if that means anything, if you guys trust my judgment via these reviews and whatnot, go check it out. It's on Facebook. It's a Facebook event, and then it'll all be live streamed on Twitch.
Right.
Link in the description below. While you're there, make sure to follow both of us on Twitter and our various social medias. And of course, subscribe down to Corey's channel and my channel as well. We're literally like I think a scrotum hair away from 750 subscribers. So let's crack that tonight, boys. With that out of the way, I want to get into all of the shenanigans we'll be going on tonight. And let's go over what actually made it to round 2, because there's quite a bit that I think either you nor I we're not fans of that actually made it to round 2. And there are certain things that might have changed our perception now that we know who is involved with what. So I'm going to share this little graphic there, and we'll get on into it. All right. Can everybody see what I'm looking at?
Yeah.
All right. So for the first round of the second stage of the DC round robin, we have Green Lantern's Underworld on Fire, which I believe I voted for. I think Corey was in favor of Etta Candy.
Yeah. Just to see.
Just to see. We have the second round, which and in the first round of this bracket, we have Zatanna and the King of Nightmares. Now, I believe both of us voted for Ambush Bug on the last one. But yeah, to be quite frank, now that I know it's the Saska sisters behind this Zatanna book, I'm far more interested, despite the fact that the pitch was kind of generic.
Yeah, and obviously we'll dive more into that when we start actually looking at each of them. But yeah, that's both more exciting, but also comes with its own baggage.
Absolutely. The next bracket, we have Lobo Animal Man Scorched Earth versus Robins. Moving on, we have Jesse Quick Control versus Blue Beetle Graduation Day. Finally, we have Suicide Squad 7 Rest in Peace Swamp Thing to Lois and Superman Ignition. So let's just jump right in on the ground one, or battle one, I should say. We have Green Lantern's Underworld on Fire versus Zatanna, King of Nightmares. Now, to give you a little bit of background information here, let's see. Green Lantern's Underworld on Fire reads, Kyle Rayner and Kilowog are on the case of space outlaws raising the intergalactic underworld sector by sector. But will Kyle go by the book when he finds out who's behind it all? Versus Zatanna, which is something is wrong with Zatanna's powers, but before she can heal, she has to confront her worst fears as well as a terrifying new foe. And as I work to pull up the little bit of artwork that they've revealed, along with the creative teams, NerdScum, what are you thinking about this round one of the second stage of round robin?
Well, again, as I said, this one, because of the creators, poses some interesting issues and possibilities. So I guess starting off with the Green Lantern book, I'm not a fan of Sina Grace in general. Mind you, I must say this, though, really the only thing I've read is his Iceman run, which is one of the worst superhero comics that I've ever read in my life. And again, it's not because it's the book about gay Iceman. It is because the writing is really poor, the characterization is really poor, the plotting was really poor, and it was made all the worse by the fact that, like, you know, there was supposedly a lot of people who were behind this book, but the sales weren't there, so it was canceled. And then due to online petitioning, they got a second volume in digital only, which I also read, and it was no better than the first. So again, it's the only thing I've read by him. You know, so based on some of his other work, he might be much more talented than that book gave me a glimpse into. But I will say this, that like at my comic shop, there was no book hated more by the gay customers that we had than the Iceman book.
Yikes.
Like, I had a customer who was an openly gay dude buy the book, rip it to pieces, and throw it in the trash so that no one else would read it, calling it poisonous, toxic.
Yikes.
Portrayal of gay characters. So take that for what it's worth. Now, the artist on that book, who is, what's the name on the guy?
V. Marion.
Yeah. So yeah, like I've seen a bit of like the covers and a little bit of the work that he's done for the Green Lantern books and stuff like that. Overall, seems like a pretty good artist. And despite what I said about not caring for Sina Grace, he seems like a good writer to pair with Sina Grace, based on just kind of the brief looking through some of Sina Grace's other work that I haven't read, but was just doing, you know, over time, I've seen bits and pieces of it. It feels like it's a good fit for kind of the image and tone that Sina Grace seems to cultivate about his books.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then with the next one, again, like you said, with the Soska sisters attached to write it, like they know horror. That's for damn sure. But they've also had like a lot of, what do you call it? You know, kind of scandalous kind of things going on recently.
Have they really?
Yeah, because, you know, yeah, just with like some of the other people they've worked with, there have been some not great things that have come out about them that make it like, it's not something where like I'm never going to watch their movies again, but it does give me a little bit of pause when like talking about giving them a new book until like something more has come of that. And as for the artist on this one, Vanessa Del Rey, like her art's great. Like she does really great, specifically female characters, but does great male characters too. And her sequential art is really good. So even despite my kind of hesitation with the Soskas, if I could speak properly, the Soskas attached, out of this bracket, I'd probably be picking Zoltana, because again, with them attached as writers on it, I feel like it could potentially be better than the very formulaic setup that we're given.
Yeah. I'm leaning the same way. I'm leaning towards Zatanna, despite the fact that, like you, I voted for Ambush Bug in round one, strictly based off of concept. It does feel cookie cutter. Pitch wise, it feels like a less developed version of James Tynan's early Justice League Dark arcs with the other kind, and the the sort of dark origins of magic. Here's the thing. The Green Lantern's Underworld on Fire at best just looks really cookie cutter. V. Ken Marion is a cool, very obviously 90s Marvel / Image inspired comic book artist who probably does really well with action. Sina Grace, the only thing I know them for is that Iceman book. And it was, I didn't read it. I've heard a lot of similar sentiments to what you were talking to me about, in terms of it being a book about the identity politics and how those came before story, which, based on our last conversation that we had with Round Robin and JLQ, it's not my thing. But I also acknowledge, like, it's not made to represent me, despite the fact that I feel like I've had a pretty good time enjoying stories that aren't made to represent me. So I feel like it should still be something that is worth engaging with, despite what's happening with identity politics or what have you. I mean, clearly I don't think that's going to be as far involved unless Kilowog or Kyle Rayner comes out of the closet. But I was also kind of taken aback because I did look up a lot of these creative teams, and you go to look up Cena Grace, and like one of the first things on their Twitter profile is like writer of the seminal Iceman run. And I'm like, well, I mean, first of all, I guess I wouldn't have a problem if it was actually seminal, but like people that write seminal arcs on characters usually don't even say that they wrote seminal arcs on characters.
Yeah. Also, normally a seminal work isn't considered to be seminal until after like enough time has passed that we can actually see like the cultural ramifications of that work throughout the culture and how it's changed perception of that character and changed the stories moving forward. And as far as we can tell, it didn't do any of those things.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And taking it with a grain of salt too, because I've never read anything else by this person, but unfortunately,
That's yeah. And that's the thing I do want to reiterate. Like, I've never actually sat down and read any of his other books. I basically read the Iceman books because they were so bad they were good to a certain extent. You know, it's why I own every copy of America Chavez that was printed, because no one will believe that was a book in another 10 years. But that's not to say that just because I didn't enjoy this one work of his, that some of his other stuff is not good. You know, there have been plenty of writers where I haven't cared for a large swath of stuff they've written, and then all of a sudden there's a book that seems like it's outside their wheelhouse, but it's actually just the chance they need to stretch their legs to show us what they can really do. So,
yeah, absolutely.
You know, just putting it in perspective.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And that's also kind of, that's where I lean into Zatanna, because I mean, first of all, I was completely unaware of whatever scandals are surrounding the Soska sisters. But what I can tell you is that I know they know horror. I know that Zatanna is a passion project for them. I've heard them on public interviews deliberately talking about how Zatanna is probably the next number one project they wanted to do, perhaps more than they wanted to do Black Widow for Marvel. And they did a pretty good job with Black Widow for Marvel. The one thing that does hold me back is this sort of generic pitch, but each of these books were given 1 to 2 sentences of what they were going to be, and we were told to decide on that alone. So things can change, and I get the sense that whoever actually wrote these books didn't write the pitches, those little 1 to 2 sentence elevator pitches. So based on the Soska sisters, based on the fact that Vanessa Del Rey is just is you know, she's a fresh artist. I haven't seen a lot of her work, but that almost wants to give me a lot more, wants me to give her a lot more leverage, because I'm a big proponent of getting fresh, inspired voices or visual artists into the community. So on that, you know, I'm going Zatanna.
Yeah. And just one last thing I did want to say about Del Rey. The thing that really, really makes me want to see that version, like her version of Zoltana, is that when you look at her artwork, the horror stuff she draw, like she can bounce back and forth from 2 modes very easily, which is like this very kind of loose, squiggly, unsettling horror style. And then on the other hand, she can do just these opulent, elegant figures so beautifully. And those are like the 2 worlds that Zoltana walks in. You know, as like a stage magician, like she's in the world of opulence and all this stuff, but she's also dealing with like the nitty gritty, scary stuff. And I just kind of, honestly, more than anything, want to see Del Rey's visual take on the world of Zoltana.
Yeah, I'm not really familiar with her art, but based on that little bit of character pinup that I saw, which I suspect is just early character designs, and some of the things that I looked up from her, like you said, she has a really cool sort of blend of styles that seems to fit Zatanna's world very well. And if at bare minimum, you know, we get something fresh. No slight against Viken Marion. I've met him at a convention before, and he's a really nice guy. And it's no knock on his art, but it is sort of generic 90s superhero aesthetic. And you know, where I'm at in sort of my comic book reading career is like, I want a sense of style that feels a little bit more individual to the artist, and that shows off how they're going to shepherd the story. And I don't get the sense of that with Viken Marion's work, despite the fact that I don't really have any major criticisms of it on a technical level. So yeah, man, Zatanna is where I'm going with that 100%.
Right out.
But Moving on into round 2, we have got Lobo Animal Man Scorched Earth by Heath Corson and artist Scott Hepburn versus Robins by Tim Seeley and Baldemar Rivas. To give you the down and dirty, son of the Lobo Animal Man. The Maine's man latest contract leads him to do the unthinkable. It's not as unthinkable as you think.
No.
For the next 6 months, Lobo will protect the superlatives out of the earth at all costs, as opposed to Robins, which, let's see, is about a group, a small group meets at Dick Grayson's apartment, but what's brought them here isn't that they're all former sidekicks to Batman. They're being hunted by one that claims to be the first. Just honestly, right off the bat, I don't know who either of the people doing the Lobo Animal Man book are. One, I don't quite care for the pitch. I think it's generic. Again, for something that is being pitched as unthinkable, it's very thinkable. We've seen Lobo have to kind of play the good guy as a what would be a sort of comparable necessary evil to him. And you know, one thing that also really got me thinking about this book is something you said last time, NerdScum, and it was about how basically everybody misunderstands Lobo and how Lobo was sort of meant to be a satire of the overly masculine, hyper-aggressive characters of the 90s, and people just really took to it, as people do, unfortunately. And this just really feels generic. I mean, that little bit of preview art that we get, this one image, is a nice, tightly done, you know, piece, but it's just not enough context. The pitch bores me. If you do an Animal Man, to be quite frank, you gotta have something big. Like, the last Animal Man run I read was by Jeff Lemire, and Jeff Lemire's pretty damn good. So if we're gonna do a follow-up, I need more out of this. Robins, it's a book I've basically been asking for, despite the fact that we're getting a really shitty Damian Wayne book by Josh Williamson and some guy who looks like generic 90s comic book artist who feels the need to complain about other people's art on Twitter. But hey, with this, you know, Tim Seeley, I either like what he does or I'm kind of indifferent. I actually really enjoyed the first half of his Nightwing run during DC Rebirth. I think he did a pretty bang up job on Grayson. Amongst other things of his that I've read, I've generally enjoyed them. I think my biggest criticism is that sometimes they just get a little bit my biggest criticism is that he can become bland, but I know he really likes the Bat family. He's done a lot of stuff with Dick Grayson before. I think he is pretty good at identifying characterization and character voices in larger casts. I think the pitch, given that it's only 1 or 2 sentences, is kind of interesting. Like, all the Robins get together and they're being hunted by somebody claiming to be the first Robin. Okay, that's actually not a bad elevator pitch. And what is just a cherry on top is that I had never heard of Baldemar Rivas. But first of all, this promo image is gorgeous. Really great color play. Really simple composition, but it stands out. I went and looked up Baldemar's art, and she has a really stunning ability to display a sense of personality in her characters. And when you're working in an ensemble book, especially one of the Bat family, who are all such different personalities, I want to see that on full display. And not only do I actually trust Seeley to be able to try to communicate that through the script. As of right now, with what limited information I've been given, I trust Baldemar to convey that well visually. And again, another one of those situations where a younger, fresh artist with an opportunity to make a name for themselves, and I'm all for it. So on that, 100%, I go Robins.
Right on. Yeah, I'm a little bit more in the middle on this one, just because neither of these were pitches I was overly excited for. And in looking into some of the stuff, so yeah, the dude, Corson, who's writing the Lobo Animal Man, he's done most of his work in TV, but the stuff he's done in TV, I've actually really enjoyed. I think like out of the majority of the stuff on his, or he's also done some of the animated movies. So like he was one of the writers for Batman Arkham City, the movie, which is really a Suicide Squad movie, but you have to call it Batman to sell it. But that was a really solid movie. And then also he was one of the writers for Justice League War, which, you know, it is what it is. You know, it's not my favorite Justice League story, and so it's clearly not going to be my favorite animated movie. But he also did work for like Justice League Action. He did one of the segments in Halo Fall of Reach. So yeah, like that's kind of interesting. Like, okay, and also like the couple episodes he did on Justice League Action, which by the way is a highly underrated show that I recommend to anyone who's a DC fan. Half the writing team on it is from the Justice League Unlimited, Batman Animated Series teams, and the others are new, fresh voices. And at least one of the episodes with this guy writing is a Lobo featured episode, and it's a really good episode. So that kind of makes me like, okay, I like the way he handled the character. So it's like, all right, that's kind of interesting. And for the artist on it, Hepburn, you know, like mostly he hasn't done a whole lot of work, but I know that he did like Revenge of Cosmic Ghost Rider. And then he also did a few issues in like the tie-ins for Forever Evil and stuff like that. So yeah, like overall his art's pretty solid, but nothing that I would write home about, you know? So that at least makes me kind of interested in what they might do with that book. Like maybe despite the blandness of the synopsis, it might be kind of an interesting original take. And then on the Robbins book, it's like Tim Seeley. He's not a bad writer, but I also don't think I've ever read a Tim Seeley book that I loved. I find that with Tim Seeley, his characterization is really decent and his plotting is, it's a Jeff Loeb problem that I keep seeing with his work, where setup is decent, characterization is decent, basic plot is really solid and draws you in, but then every time it comes time to stick the landing, I always feel underwhelmed. So the part that excites me about this book for Tim Seeley is getting to see these different Robins interacting, which I think really is the main draw of the book. You know, and then like this other secret first Robin character is really kind of more of just the MacGuffin to get everything working. You know, it's a plot device to more or less extent to bring all these characters together and give them a common thing to work together over so we can see those interactions play out. So in that respect, I imagine it'll be really fulfilling. And in terms of the artwork for this one, like, again, like you were saying, this piece that they've given us looks fantastic. My only like real issue, and it's not even an issue, it's just a worry, is that for most of the stuff I've seen from this artist, it's been like cover art, which can be very, very different than sequential art, and especially like scheduled sequential art where you have to get a book in at a certain time, or even some people who are decent with sequential art, you put them under the time restraint and some of that, you know, gets lost in translation. So I don't know. I'm kind of trepidatious about both of these, but also kind of interested to see what they do. And if I have to be completely honest, I kind of want to see the Lobo and Animal Man just because I kind of want to see what these guys do with it.
Okay, that's interesting.
And again, like I think the Robin stuff would be really fun, but as you remember, I wasn't in favor of the Robin book from the beginning, so it's just not something that, like, even though I love Batman, not something that calls to me.
See, it's funny because I'm definitely one of those Batman fans that's been calling for the desaturation of Batman. And I know a couple of people that are like, oh, good, another Batman book. Well, I'm like, well, maybe not. Like, as far as I understand, this does very much feel like it's going to be a Robin-centric arc where Bruce, you know, I guess it's difficult to not appease the DC gods and have Batman pop in, you know, here and then. But honestly, I'm way more interested in watching the dynamics play out between these characters because they're all such unique individuals. They all bring such unique traits to not only their dynamic, but unique skills to their sort of ensemble. I've been saying that the DC universe has been missing a general Bat family book that is more about the family surrounding Batman as opposed to Batman himself, and for multiple reasons. But this book is just something that I've kind of been asking for. And frankly, considering the fact that, DC got my hopes up by saying that we were getting a Damian Wayne Robin book, and then also in the same swift breath going, but by Joshua Williamson. This is my replacement for that. And I realize I'm like exercising a certain level of privilege to say that, oh, I get to choose between 2 Robin books. But I generally do like Tim Seeley, and I agree with a lot of your sentiments. I really did enjoy, in terms of his longer arcs, his earlier Nightwing stuff and Rebirth, and felt like it kind of fell flat. But where I kind of give him credit for it, even in the spot that I wasn't in love with it, was that he was at least trying to do something new and trying to do something fresh. And I can appreciate that about him, considering we've kind of just seen over the last couple of years a lot of industry veterans and legends, that have just phoned in work. And I never get the sense of that with Tim Seeley. So between concept, this beautiful art, despite how little of it we're looking at, and everything, I'm definitely shooting Robins. And not only that, I also think it's the most likely to win the whole shebang as well, which,
yeah, for sure,
I'm not complaining about.
No, yeah. Honestly, at the end of the day, it'll probably come down to this versus the Superman and Lois book. But that's also probably why I nudged a little closer to Lobo and Animal Man, just because I know it's not going to win. Like, anything you put up against the Robins, unless it's just a Batman book, the Robin book is going to win.
I'm not mad.
So
I'm not mad, man. I'm really not. Also, I did look up Heath Corson, and the only really big comic book credits I could find was that really weird Bizarro book from DCU.
Yeah.
And I don't look back very fondly on anything from DCU, so that doesn't necessarily play to his strength.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, cool. So moving on into the next one. So very clearly I voted for Robins. I think I really only voted for these top 2 so far in this round. Yep. And then it comes up here because I knew 100% that there was just going to be nothing changing my mind away from those 2. Yeah. But moving on into this next round, we have Blue Beetle Graduation Day by Josh Trujillo and Adrian Gutierrez versus Jesse Quick Control by Stephanie Phillips and David LaFuente. Just to give you a little bit of the down and dirty, let's see here. Blue Beetle Graduation Day. I'm sorry, we'll start with Jesse Quick. Jesse Quick Control. As Jesse Quick's super speed fades, she gains a new ability. Surprise. But when the power begins to corrupt Jesse, she must give it up or risk becoming, quite literally, her own worst enemy, because we haven't seen that before. All right. Then we have Blue Beetle Graduation Day. When the Reach interrupt Jaime's graduation, the fallout puts his future as Blue Beetle in jeopardy and poses the ultimate question. What does life look like after high school? I'll say this. Neither one of these books interests me in the least. Based on the pitch.
Based on the pitch, no.
Yeah, based simply on character, I like Jaime. He does carry very much that sort of Batman Beyond aesthetic, that sort of next generational vibe that I grew up with. I was a big fan of the Young Justice TV show when I was like in middle school / early high school, and he was a big feature there. However, and despite the fact that this art looks really solid, despite what little we've gotten, it looks great. That pitch just bores me to tears. And the fact that the freaking log line question is, what comes next after a high school? You're a freaking space beetle guy.
Right.
I don't care about high school, dog. I don't think he does either. And like, it feels like a lazy retread on trying to capture the old school Peter Parker Spider-Man sentimentality.
Yeah, we've also already seen it in Invincible, Better. Yeah,
Better.
like, so, yeah, and like, honestly, the creative team on it doesn't really excite me very much. Again, with the author, we've got someone who's mostly done Adventure Time and Rick and Morty comics. And as much as I like those IPs, those comics are very hit and miss from the ones that I have read. That's not to say that they couldn't do this book well again, but I just haven't seen anything from them that makes me excited about them tackling this character. And at the same time, the artist on it, while I'm not very familiar with their work, in general, their art's really good. I like the kind of blend of like kind of manga and traditional American comic style that they got, but sometimes that also just doesn't work for me. A good example of this is if you look in the image that they've given us, the face on the Blue Beetle armor, I can't stand that. Now, again, if this is a book that's being geared more towards younger readers, that makes perfect sense, you know. And if you want to go more manga with the book, then that's a direction no one's tried. So I'm not holding it against you, but it doesn't personally work for me, you know. Whereas the creative team on Jesse Quick actually kind of does excite me a little bit. So in terms of the art, you know, this dude has done like, you know, he's worked with Neil Gaiman in the Graveyard book. He did parts of Ultimate Spider-Man. He did Spider-Man Family, I think number 2 or 3. He did some of the Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man and some New Mutants. Like, it's all pretty solid art. It's very stylized for the most part, but I enjoy it. And then as for the writer on it, you know, Stephanie Phillips, you know, like, I haven't read any of her Harley Quinn's art stuff that supposedly, I think it's coming out like right now. I haven't actually read any of that. But she also did some stuff on Batman Legends of the Dark Knight, Sensational Woman, Superman, or the book that I remember her most from is Tarna.
The heavy metal magazine.
Yeah. Like, her work on Tarna was great. Like, the best that book has been in frickin' years. And again, like, you're dealing with a character who is actually dealing with like some interesting moral quandaries and things of that nature. So it makes me feel like that even though the premise for this sounds a little generic, that she has the skills as a writer to make it feel like it has gravity to it. And while we're talking about her skills as a writer, I'm just going to read this off my notes because I won't remember this stuff. So she also holds a PhD in rhetoric and composition and an MA in English from the University of South Florida. She's taught writing and communication courses at the University of Buffalo and the University of South Florida and in the University of Tampa. Like, when it comes to writing, this woman knows her stuff. She's got the work that can show it, and she's got the credentials that can show it. And like, so honestly, even if it were a different artist, I'm going with Jesse Quick on this one, just based on her being on the book.
Yeah. I would also lean Jesse Quick as well. The thing is that I'm generally more interested in Blue Beetle as a character. However, again, I mean, neither one of these pitches are doing either of them any justice whatsoever.
No.
But, you know, at least one doesn't ask me what the fuck comes next after high school. And you know what? This promo art for Blue Beetle, I really do. I really enjoy it. There's a lot of life, a lot of personality, a very clean, sort of simple design work to it. But Jesse Quick, I want a good Flash book right now. I haven't read a good Flash book in forever and a half. I think despite what some people want to say, the Flash mythology is actually pretty bare bones when it comes to greatness. You know, I am also in this camp that argues that most of Mark Waid's Flash isn't as good as people say it is, despite some areas that I really do enjoy. I think that the Flash is really just not gotten the amount of quality that it deserves. And Stephanie Phillips is just a relatively young, up-and-coming writer who I think is passionate about what she does. And I think if you're going to dip in and grab this D-list Flash character, she probably has something in the bank creatively for this run that is far more interesting than what DC's PR team was able to spit out at us. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, her credentials are certainly very impressive. I mean, I know you know more than I that like those sort of educational credentials, while valuable, don't mean anything, right? I mean, like your favorite
Right.
writer was like a plumber, you know,
Yeah.
by trade before he went off and
Right.
really did
And
his
I
thing.
only mentioned the credentials in tandem with the work I've seen her do,
Mhm,
because like you said, on their own, they don't mean squat.
mhm.
Just because someone knows how all that stuff's supposed to work doesn't mean that from here to the page, it's going to come out, as good as all the things they learned.
Mhm.
But for me, it's just pairing her work with those credentials.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there. So with you, I'm going to agree. I'm going to go with Jesse Quick Control. And just peeking into the chat here, we got another vote for Jesse Quick. Mark McKeever says he doesn't know as much as we do about the creative teams, but it feels like DC is scraping the bottom of the barrel for talent. I actually kind of disagree, despite the fact that I don't know who this Josh Trujillo guy is, because to be quite frank, would I rather have the same big names that have been middling through DC with a stench of mediocrity, or would I have fresh new names that have the potential to do something entirely different? I would pick the latter
Right.
of the two.
I mean, they're definitely obscure, but I mean, even just from looking at the images they've shared with us of the artists, the artists alone, you can tell by looking at their artwork, they're definitely not the bottom of the barrel.
No.
They're definitely less known. They have less experience. They'll be cheaper. That's for sure.
Mhm.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's of a lesser quality. In truth, like these are the guys who are hungry. They want it. And if you give them a stage, then they might pull out all the stops and blow us away. Whenever,
Yeah.
someone who's been doing it for 20 years, like he knows you're going to buy the next book that he draws. So,
Mhm.
like whatever he has time to do is what it'll be good enough.
And even then, honestly, with this scraping the bottom of the barrel, like if that's the metaphor we're using, that's the only way someone like me would get a job at DC right now, is if they were scraping the bottom of the barrel, right? Like I have no name. So I don't know, just putting it into that perspective, I prefer to get young, fresh voices that aren't just as entangled in the complacency of veteranship or even in the corporate fucking snares, man. So yeah, despite the fact that I think these pitches that we've been given both kind of suck, uh, the Jesse Quick Control book has kind of won me over a little bit more based on who's involved and based on the passion. And I could very well not like it, and that's fine. But
Yeah.
between the two, there's one clear, I think, example of who I would rather take the risk on, and
Yeah,
that's Stephanie Phillips and David LaFuente.
definitely. There's also something to
Um,
be said about the fact that, like, while Jaime is a newer character, Jesse Quick is a much less well-known character, and that
mhm,
gives you a lot more liberties to play with her. Like every time we see Jesse Quick in the comic, she's almost a completely different personality because they're
mhm.
just trying things on, and there hasn't been one that's fit yet. Whereas, like, Jaime as a character is pretty well established in terms of his personality and stuff. So, you'll get a lot more room for the creators to stretch their legs with Jesse Quick.
Yeah, that's totally fair. We'll see. Here's the thing. Like we said, there's a good chance that pretty much all this sees some extent of print. So, whatever. I don't know what the stakes really are here, aside from the winner probably just gets a little bit more room to play, in which case I want Robbins. So I think I'm gonna get it. Also, Mark, I'm pretty sure Grant Morrison was the one that conception, like that had the concept of bringing Barry Allen back during Final Crisis, not Mark Waid, right?
Yeah, I mean, there is a Mark Waid book called The Return of Barry Allen,
Mhm.
but it's not actually Barry Allen.
Yeah, wasn't it just like the Black Flash or
Well, it's
whatever?
actually Zoom. It's actually the post-crisis retcon for Zoom's origin.
Mm,
It's actually one of the better books in Mark Waid's run because it is actually really well. I say one of the better, like one of the best 5 stories in his run. It's a really good book, but yeah, he planted the idea of like Barry coming back, which honestly, if you read like those issues, if you can track down the actual issues and they still have like letters from creators and stuff in the back, you can tell
mhm.
it's something Mark Waid really did more as a way of being like, all right, everyone shut up. Barry's not coming back. He's gone. You want Barry back? Here's a story that tells you he'll never come back.
Yeah, and last I remembered, I think it was like Grant Morrison that kind of committed to Barry Allen's still alive, and then it was Jeff Johns that was actually like, yeah, Barry's coming back.
Yeah, like at the end of the Infinite Crisis. Final
Crisis? Final Crisis?
Well, I know he takes a part in Final Crisis. Is it? No, yeah.
Because Final Crisis is when he's running away from the racer, the black racer.
But in Infinite Crisis, isn't there a moment where he just pops out of the Speed Force and grabs someone? I think maybe Superboy Prime.
Maybe. I don't remember. Jesus, I got to go back and reread that stuff. Let
us know down in the comments below.
Yeah.
Also, you guys remember.
Also, it's all good, Mark. No clobbering. It's all love, man. I had to stick up for my fellow no-name writers. You know what I'm saying? You can't fault me for that, because I would only like to be the person that somebody who doesn't know who I am to say, yeah, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel, aren't you now, DC? So, getting on into the final round, we have Superman and Lois Ignition by Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing with artist Vasco Georgiev versus Suicide Squad 7 by Rex Ogle and Diogen. The way I was going to pronounce it sounds like it's a scientific thing. I was going to say Diogenes, but Nevis. That's all I'm going to say.
I assumed it was Diogenes, kind of more of like a Greek pronunciation.
Probably. She did some weird Greek poetic thing in the first issue of like this newest revival of Batman Black and White, and it was like super hyper pretentious. So thank God she's just drawing this thing. But Suicide Squad 7. This isn't generic at all. In South America, Harley Quinn leads an adventurer, a stage magician, a sugar-obsessed killer, a former hero, a drunk assassin, a mute metahuman, and a child who becomes a monster. Oh boy, original. Versus Superman and Lois Ignition. Our solar system is a machine, and its purpose is to trap and kill Superman. Together, he and Lois face ancient aliens and trickster asteroids as they fight to save our future. I'm going to be quite frank. I didn't really want either of these. I don't think. Maybe I did end up going Superman, but now that I know who's on it, goes to show you what we were saying in the last episode. We did this, how true this was, is that the creative teams change everything, and it makes me wish that they actually let us know what the creative teams were supposed to be on the books that we voted against. Because despite whatever I ended up going with on the last one, I do not want a Kelly and Lansing Superman book. You want to talk about scraping the bottom of the barrel? Those are the guys that they throw on books to clean up the end of a run when the big name just wants to jump off. And DC's like, but we need to hit the number 52.
Is that when they threw them on Arrow, on the Green Arrow book?
They threw them on Green Arrow. Yep. They did that with Grayson, actually, not to get to number 52, but they actually kind of butchered the ending of Grayson because Tom King was offered Batman and Tim Seeley was offered Nightwing for Rebirth. So they messed that up, amongst other things. And honestly, just off the fact that I had never heard of Rex Ogle before, and Diogenes has a pretty unique sort of articulate style, I'm probably going to lean Suicide Squad 7, but fuck them both because I really wanted Swamp Thing. What are you thinking, NerdScum?
Yeah, I'm thinking I also really wanted Swamp Thing, but so yeah, like so like with Kelly and Lansing, I'm less familiar with their pickup work they've done. Mm-hmm. In fact, like I think the only things I really know them from, there's three things, and that's Gotham City Garage, which was actually a pretty fun book that I enjoyed, even though it was stupid as all hell. It was also it was just a book made to promote a line of statues they were doing. So, I didn't expect much. And then some of their Star Trek stuff, which I enjoyed about half of it because they had really good plots and stories, but I found a lot of the characterization to not be, being a Star Trek nerd, Not exactly what I was looking for. And then with the artist on that, I really only know them from Deja Thoris. No, it's Thoris, yeah. And then also from there are all these crossover concept covers that they do, which is not really for any of the books. It's just original art, and all of them look really good. But yeah, like not really enough there for me to really hone in on how I feel about them as an artist. And then for like Suicide Squad 7, which by the way, for some reason in our last live stream, I was conflating the 7 in this to be reminiscent of the Sinister, or not Sinister, but the Secret 6, which is not a 7, it's a 6. So I don't know how I screwed that up in my head. Just mentioning for anyone who caught that one and was like, hey. So anyway, but no, Rex Ogle, I think the only thing I've written by him is his prose book, or read by him is his prose book, which is Free Lunch, which was a solid book. From that. And then also I read his World of Flashpoint book, which I didn't like, but I also didn't like most of the World of Flashpoint books. So, I mean, like a lot of them had good spectacle, but it was like, it didn't really amount to anything. And yeah, with the Greek lady, the art in Batman versus Deathstroke was really solid. The stuff that she did on Deathstroke was really good. I don't even actually know if this is a man or a woman. I was just looking up the books, but either way, whoever this person, this individual, however they want to be gender identified as, they have solid artwork, through and through. So, oh
my God, it's a man.
Okay.
I thought it was a woman.
At first I did too. And then I just kind of I thought all that also. And then whenever I think I just went with it. So apologies to you, sir, if that's how you prefer to be identified. But yes, Home Dude's got great artwork, and I think that, based on the artwork there, that there could be some really cool stuff going down in terms of art in the Suicide Squad book. But I'll be completely honest. I originally was going with Superman just because I liked the premise, but nothing in these. Oh yeah, the other thing I should mention about those two writers is they did the Tales of the Dark Multiverse, Dark Knight's Metal.
Oh, God.
Which was not only one of the worst Tales of the Dark Multiverse books, despite the fact that Scott Snyder still had something to do with it. But we've already accepted that Scott Snyder is not at the peak of his run in DC Comics anymore. But yeah, it's also one of the worst things to come out of Dark Knight's Metal in general.
Oh, that's saying something.
Yeah.
Wow. How do you do a Dark Multiverse Dark Knight's Metal if Dark Knight's Metal took place across all of the Dark Multiverses?
Well, and I feel like this is a bigger conversation for a different live stream, because they also did a Crisis on Infinite Earths, Tales of the Dark Multiverse. And it's like, so wait, break. So do all of the multiverse, and there's dark, how is this? Never mind. So
the Dark Multiverse Dark Knight's Metal, is it just like the Batman who laughs more? Like, is that the story?
I mean, the story is just an Earth where the good guys lost, and then, a couple of characters go to fight the final battle, and it turns out that other heroes have been turned into monsters, and then they ride the Joker Dragon, because remember, the Joker Dragon didn't really do anything of importance in Dark Knight's Metal, so they ride the Joker Dragon, and then like a lot of punching happens, and I don't remember how. Oh yeah, and it's got Nightwing in it, and he's got that same, like, I think he's got that same guitar, that the scythe guitar that Batman has in Death Metal. But he's using like different little power bits from different superheroes to turn it into a weapon.
Oh, no.
I don't remember where it goes because it didn't matter and it was dumb.
Ooh, you're really pushing me into this generic Suicide Squad book. I mean, I listen. I'm still bitter because I wanted that Swamp Thing book, and I know you're in the same camp. But
Yeah.
perhaps you're too good of a person to be as bitter as I am. But yeah, dude. I mean, that's the thing is my only experience with Kelly and Lansing are just like the mediocre cleanup crew. Um, I've never read anything by them that I've particularly enjoyed, and while I've never read anything by Rex Ogle at all, the track record is immediately neutral as opposed to negative. And Nevis, their art is actually pretty great. It's really solid. They have what I really really like is very clearly even just in this promotional image. I know it's probably small for some people watching this video, but they're able to really make all of these different characters stand out amongst the cast, which I think is going to be pretty important for something like this. They really know how to spot their blacks and accomplish a sense of depth. And through that, they know how to take those and gradiate them out into texture, which I can really, really appreciate. Despite the fact that, aside from I forgot that they did the Deathstroke stuff, which I enjoyed. This person also did, like I said, a backup story in Batman Black and White issue 1 from this newest revival. The art was cool, despite the fact that like the entire story was an absolute mess that really had nothing to do with Batman. It was just like this really weird, pretentious thing where it's like, we're going to talk about a Greek poem. And
it was like Tom King's Batman. Okay.
Oh, but like way more unrelated to Batman. Like Batman, like you get this weird anthropomorphic Batman looking thing, and that's the closest you get to Batman in that story. Yeah.
Okay.
So on that, I'm gonna have to hand a big old yeet over to Kelly and Lansing and go with generic Suicide Squad.
Even when we went into this conversation, I was probably going to be going with Superman and Lois just because the story and the fact that I did like what these guys did on some of the Star Trek stuff for plotting. But now, like, as I'm thinking about it, you know what? If they had their own book that wasn't with an established IP that was the same story, I think I'd probably be more willing to give it a chance. Also, just looking at this little bit of art that they gave us, what's going on with Superman's arm?
I thought you were going to say what was happening with his neck, but yeah, that works true.
The neck too. And I understand what's supposed to be happening with his arm. It's supposed to be like foreshortening, but that's not what it looks like. So yeah, okay, I'm going with Suicide Squad as well, which I like Suicide Squad and I love Harley Quinn. So, no big loss there. I just wanted a good Superman book, damn it.
Oh, you're telling me, man. I was all for the Philip Kennedy Johnson taking over Superman, and then I read his Future State stuff, and I was like, oh boy, was I wrong. So here we are, where I'm actually voting for a generic looking Suicide Squad book. I'm still bitter at DC. I still want Swamp Thing. Yeah, so I think that pretty much closes this one out. We did get a clarification from the C Commander saying, yes, it was Infinite Crisis when Barry popped out at Speed Force and grabbed Superboy Prime. Appreciate you, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you,
for
sir.
the clarification.
They'll save me some time going back through it tonight.
Yes, sir.
Because I would have spent like the next 10 minutes being like, where the hell does it freaking happen?
Honestly, I'm on a reread of Gideon Falls, and I don't think anything's stopping me from that. So
nice.
Mark McKeever has a really interesting question as we close out. So overall, is this whole round robin experiment a success or just industry noise? I think it is really entertaining industry noise because despite the fact that I might not have agreed with this in the beginning, I think you look at what's there and you could pretty much predict for the most part what's going to win straight from the jump. By the way, let me vote for Suicide Squad. Wow, that's a close run. But I don't remember where I was going with that. Anyways,
yeah, I was gonna say, I think honestly it's a little too early to tell at the end of the day, but it's very true that like really in order for this to work out as well as it could, like all these things would have to be on even playing ground, And I feel like when you throw things like Superman and Robin in there, or even like now, Suicide Squad's doing pretty good because that trailer just dropped. There's a lot of awareness of Suicide Squad and people want to see more of that kind of fun that the trailer seems to hold in store, So like, like I think things like the Blue Beetle and Jesse Quick, really, if you're going to do a round robin, that's probably more of the kind of books that should be featured. Or even like the Etta Candy and Ambush Bug, like stuff like that, that's outside of the norm.
Yeah.
Probably not your big flagship characters, in order for it to really be fair and to see if it's those things make me lean more toward it being just kind of, industry hype and kind of, nebulous hoo-ha. Like, I'm pretty sure all the people behind this thing know that it's either going to be Superman or Robins that win.
Yeah, but to be fair though, I wouldn't even call Superman's definitely a flagship. I don't know. The Robins are necessary. I mean, they're associated with Batman, so it certainly gives them a leg up on most of these things. But you look at most of those Robin characters, the occasional normie probably doesn't know anything about most of the Robins aside from their names.
No, but and again, that's fair. Again, I say that they're flagship more in the sense that they are so closely associated with Batman that by the general public, a Robin's book is perceived as a Batman book.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people. I've seen a lot of people complaining about that, particularly the ones complaining about how JLQ didn't get green light and how it was destined to die up against Robins. Well, guess what? If it was going to face Robins in the final round, it was still destined to die. So I guess you might as well, bring Old Yeller out behind the shed and put it down. But despite that, I think that frankly, you look at the Robins book, yeah, maybe it does have that slight advantage by association, but it also just looks like the most well put together package from creative team to what little promotional art we have to pitch, to be quite frank. And aside from that, maybe Zatanna being the second best engaging thing. Even then, though, I think and I'm saying this as somebody who's had a lot of not so positive things to say about DC as of late. The fact that they didn't just straight say, hey, how about a Batman book, in this thing? And there are a lot of really weird, obscure characters that they're willing to give a try because, I mean, most of us have watched competition and or sports. Underdogs win. It does happen. Despite the unlikelihood, they can still win. So I think that overall, I like the idea of doing this. And if DC were to do this once a year and let us decide on a book once a year, I think that would be really cool. I know it's actually despite, again, the fact that I think that most of this will see print at some point and that pretty much none of this will go to waste. I do feel like you got to give them credit because not all of this art that they're paying for is actually going to be used. So, they are investing something in this, as far as I'm concerned. And I would very much like to do this again. I would like to see something like this in the future, and maybe in a world where they don't put a Superman book in there. But hey,
yeah,
that's just me. But overall, just do a quick run it back. Round 1 between Green Lantern's Underworld on Fire and Zatanna and the King of Nightmares, I'm locking in final answer Zatanna. What about you?
Yeah, same.
And second round, we have Lobo and Animal Man versus Robins. I think very clearly I'm going with Lobo and Animal Man, aka Robins. But what about you?
Yeah, again, I'm almost indifferent, but I'm just going to go with the Lobo Animal Man just because it's another one of those of I'd just like to see what the hell they're going to pull. And again, I don't know. I'm almost indifferent, so I'm just going to say Lobo and Animal Man, even though I don't really care.
Fair enough. Round 3, you have generic high school drama with Blue Beetle versus generic speedster story with Jesse Quick. Despite the fact that I like Jaime Reyes as a character, I'm sticking Jesse Quick. Creative team seems a little bit more proven, a little bit more inspired. And despite the pitch seeming no more inspired than the pitch for Blue Beetle, what I mentioned prior does kind of give it that edge.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Jesse Quick all the way.
So vote for Jesse Quick. Stuff the ballot, please. We're about to take a hard L. And in the final round, we have Superman and Lois versus Suicide Squad. Despite the fact that Superman's hand looks like a kunai knife and his freaking neck looks like the freaking thighs of a bodybuilder, uh, I'm going Suicide Squad 7. I think Diogenes, forgive my butchering of your name, has a really unique art style that sort of merges a little bit of more delicacy with traditional comic book superhero imposing figures. Has a very delicate touch with their ink brush, which I really appreciate. Uh, Despite the fact that I think the Superman Lois pitch is actually just more interesting
Yeah.
than the Suicide Squad one.
Oh, Trevor, we're losing him. Oh, well, looks like he is gone. That sucks, guys.
I made it back.
There you go. All right.
Yeah, I don't know what just happened. I just got a prompt from StreamYard that just said you got yeeted, and here I am. But basically, what I was getting at is that despite the fact that I think the Superman pitch is actually more interesting, the creative team means way more to me. And I've really just never had any positive experience with Kelly and Lansing. They seem like the default backup crew for the backup crew. And I haven't heard of Rex Ogle. I'd rather give somebody I've never heard of a shot than a pair of writers that have just not proven themselves to me with plenty of experience. So yeah, I'm going Suicide Squad.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Suicide Squad as well, because while there have been plenty of Suicide Squad stories since like New 52, especially, like we've just had an overabundance of Suicide Squad because Harley will always sell a book when you put her on the cover, you know. Despite that, I feel like there are very few really great Suicide Squad stories in there. So bringing on some new talent who has like an outside perspective and a fresh take on the characters right around the time that you're getting ready to do a new movie for it, like that makes sense to me. And the stuff for the Superman book, it's like, again, those writers, I have read things I've enjoyed by them, but nothing that I loved. Nothing that makes me go, oh yeah, they're the perfect people to write this particular story. So yeah, as much as like the Suicide Squad sound, but the thing about Suicide Squad is the description of every Suicide Squad story sounds bland. Like it always sounds boring. It always sounds like generic B 80s action movie, like special unit sent in to do this thing. It's one of the things that's so weird about the first Suicide Squad movie is like that's a threat that they would never go up against in the comic. So yeah, like it's actually the one out of all these books that I feel the generic like synopsis doesn't actually speak illy about the idea itself, because that's what every Suicide Squad book sounds like.
Yeah, and it's hard to really put everything into a real frame of mind, because it's very clear that these little elevator pitches were written by DC's PR team as opposed to the people that actually worked on these stories, which is one of the many sort of downfalls of this, second only to not revealing the creative team until round 2, because not like that changes everything to the people that actually read comic books. But here we are. I think overall this is an interesting experiment for DC. I hope they keep it going. It seems like it's getting votership. I see a lot of those things with over 10,000 votes to them. And sure, you're going to have a lot of normies that don't actually read comics voting in those things because they're Snyder Cutties or whatever. But you know what? It's interaction. It's people exposing themselves to the material and to the characters. And even if they do just kind of offhand vote for something because of whatever reason, they might be more inclined to go check it out because of that. So overall, it's an interesting, fun experiment. And I wouldn't talk about this topic with anybody other than my guy NerdScum. So, man, let the folks know at home, what do you have going on over on your channel? What do they have to look forward to?
Right on. Well, yeah. So let's see. Just yesterday, I released my newest video covering Cross Plus 100. This one on issue 3. So Cross Plus 100 is kind of like the more post-apocalyptic take on the material. First volume is written by Alan Moore, so I just got that coming out. I'm about to, later this week, early next week, I've got a video diving into the failed Crow sequel starring DMX, which was supposed to be called The Crow Lazarus, which, for the record, I was already working on before he passed.
Yeah.
It's not just me being an exploitive piece of crap. I was already going to be talking about it, and it just worked out that way.
I can vouch for it too. He came to me and he's like, would it be really shitty if I release this video despite the fact that I've been working on it? And I'm like, no, man. I mean, honestly, first of all, it's not like you're going total clickbait and then having nothing to actually say about it. You have a topic. It's probably going to be meaningful to people that care about DMX and or The Crow or both. So why the hell not do it? Right? It's better than, I would rather somebody click on that than somebody click on some video about like some tabloid headline, about DMX's past or whatever. So
yeah, right on. Yeah. And, I obviously filmed the video before he passed, but I'm still going out of my way to be very respectful, So beyond that, I also, something new I'm about to start up is, I think once a month, I'm going to have a video coming out where I'm going to cover the Crow Stairway to Heaven television series.
I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, dude, from like the late 90s, early 2000s. It's really bad. It stars Eric Dukakis. The dude from like Iron Chef and John Wick 3. Him as Eric Draven. It's not a good show.
It doesn't sound like it.
No, there's 22 episodes and I'm gonna do them all. So yeah, I'm gonna be starting that, but also I've got tons of other videos coming on comic books, TV, movies, filmmaking, all that kind of stuff. And once again, I want to mention that if you guys are watching and are at all interested, we've got the Little Spark Films, live event coming at the end of the month, with just like awesome short films done by us, as well as the trailer for Vice Mares, our next big feature film, I should say.
Yeah, go check it out. Link in the description, man. Corey's been talking to me about the Vice Mares film for months, and it seems like a lot of fun. It's super unique. It's a type of movie that you won't get anywhere else. So if you enjoy good times and you like having them, go click the link in the description. Go click that little interested button on the Facebook group so that you get all the notifications that you need, and be there, because I'm going to be there. Or for all that is Dr. Seuss, you will be square. Over with me. Please, obviously, if you enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like so that we know that this is the type of content that you enjoy seeing on the channel. I felt like I didn't have my mojo. I shaved it away with my mustache, but it will come back shortly, I hope. Aside from that, we are very close to 750 subscribers. Literally, by that, I think we're at 749. So
nice.
Let's knock that out. We are on the road to 1,000, at which we will have an absolutely stellar giveaway. And I think I'm going to set some goals in terms of timeliness for that, because the better we do, the more I'll be able to give away, including full trade paperbacks of Invincible, Daredevil, Star Wars, a hardcover of Alan Moore's Miracle Man, a Greg Capullo Dark Knight's Metal signed print, amongst many things. So subscribe to this motherfucker. And if you want to subscribe to me for anything other than me bribing you, I just put out a review of Jeff Johns and Gary Frank's first independent comic book outing of Geiger #1 through Image Comics. Prior to that, you have reviews of Tom Taylor's stellar debut on Nightwing and Nocterra #1. I do plan on this week getting to either a Nocterra #2 review or Batman the Detective by Tom Taylor and the good Kubert brother, Andy. One of those two will be coming out this week. I just haven't determined which one I want to do first. So keep an eye out for that. And of course, stay tuned for next week on another awesome episode of Let's Talk Comics, where I just get to shoot the shit with my friends and be upset that I don't have a mustache anymore. So with all of that out of the way, subscribe down below to NerdScum's channel, subscribe down below to my channel, click the like button if you enjoyed it, and thank you and your mom for watching. We'll catch you next time.
Later, guys.